So, quite a few pieces of information relating to the other party. For those that don't know, I mean, you really should not be listening to this episode at this time if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, or at least have a general understanding of all the points of the case. I mean, there are a couple of nights in question. There's the Thursday night alleged breakdown, which we've gone over many times. Perhaps Maura Murray got fired. Perhaps there's other reasons why her supervisor, Karen Mayotte, why her police report is given the Area 51 treatment while Fred Murray's is freely available. Really weird. And this is from the Thursday night. And that Saturday night, supposedly there was a party at Sarah Alfieri's dorm. She can't remember anybody who was there. Now, it's come out that apparently her cousin might have been there. And that's why she didn't want to get him in trouble. Perhaps she knew for certain he had nothing to do with Maura Murray's disappearance. Perhaps he's a drug dealer or involved in other shady business, so she did not want to reveal his name publicly. Maybe she gave his name to the police. Maybe she didn't. Again, none of this has been definitively verified by anyone. But either way, there might have been a second party in an area with a lot of fraternity houses and a lot of frat parties. This is a Saturday night, so to speak. So, yeah, definitely a party night. This is the night where Maura Murray allegedly got into the accident, the Hadley accident. For whatever reason, she needed to go return the car. Maybe she was the driver in that case. Maybe she wasn't. But unlike Haverhill, New Hampshire, apparently there is evidence she was present at the scene of the Hadley accident. There is no such evidence in Haverhill, New Hampshire. But at the Hadley accident, either she might have been ran off the road, she might have been a passenger in the vehicle. Again, these are all unknowns. Nobody wants to talk about. And there's, of course, the as of yet unnamed police cadet, UMass police cadet, which I mentioned several possibilities in the UMass police cadet episode. But why was she seemingly going all the way across town here from Amherst to Hadley when she could have just went to her dorm and driven the car back in the morning? Now, there's obviously a lot of unanswered questions there. Did she visit another party? If so, what happened at the other party? Is this a party that Billy Rausch knew about? What about Billy Rausch's friend in the area who some believe was keeping tabs on Maura Murray? Now again, there's so many unknowns here. Billy Rausch could be the good guy here. So if Maura Murray got wrapped up either as a CI or otherwise in some really shady business, possibly some corrupt police, corrupt UMPD, some drug running through pizza places, again, this is all, that dorm had like one of the biggest drug busts in history. So this is all, there's precedent here. There's definitely precedent. So all the coincidence theorists that hallucinate that there's a zero chance of this, I mean, they're obviously quite silly and not based in reality. There's some drug business going on at college campuses, particularly UMass at the time, which has on record some particularly large drug busts. So, if Maura Murray got herself involved in something like this, and she didn't know how to get out of it, would she enlist the help of Billy Rausch in the military, possibly with a friend or two in the area, maybe to try to help her? Is that a possibility? So, let's go to Reddit for some astute researchers. So on the Sham subreddit, r/Maura Murray, occasionally there are some decent posts that slip through the cracks of the Sham moderators. Here's one by Marie for Poaches. About a month ago, Maura was seen on Phillips Street. On this street precisely, 2729, there are student rooms. So this Phillips Street address, which supposedly has connections to Iranians, possibly in the same circle as Patrick Vassi's landlord, again, and Recluse Auto, which will be going over some mechanic connections, which just, as try as they might, the narrative steers and the coincidence steers to sweep under the rug all the shady business with salvage and car shops and all of these connections, they just don't really seem to die because astute researchers just keep pounding away at these possibilities despite the best efforts of the steerers, the trolls, and the obfuscators to just pretend that she made it up to New Hampshire and then she got lost in the woods and died or some kind of nonsense like that. Which, of course, that's a theoretical possibility, but it's just weird how some people just insist, against all logic and reason, ignoring coincidence stacks that are stratospheric to maintain their blind faith in this narrative that she just was suicidal and fell and stumbled in the woods and died. So, this Phillip Street address, highly suspect. A cousin of Maura Murray's might have also stayed there. And a cousin of Maura Murray's might have also been on the track team. Now, some people allege that Maura Murray might not have even known that this cousin was her cousin. Now, I don't really know what to think about that, because if it's like a second or third or fourth or fifth cousin, I mean, I don't know. If it's a gigantic family with dozens and dozens of cousins, I guess theoretically that's not the most implausible scenario. I mean, supposedly Murray is a fairly common last name. I mean, we don't really see it in this case. Like, obviously, there's a couple of Smiths, which to nobody's surprise, obviously, because Smith is one of the most common last names ever. But in Massachusetts, supposedly Murray is quite a common name. So I don't know what to make of that, but let's continue here. So some allege that Maura Murray might have specifically had a friend, other boyfriend, whomever, that lived at this Phillip Street address. And okay, there's also the story of whether or not Maura Murray really had a roommate or not. And people go back and forth. I mean, this is really a unique case because literally nothing can be nailed down in this case. There's no other case like it. I mean, if someone told me when I did episode 1 of this Maura Murray series that this would go beyond, I didn't even know there'd be an episode 2 for sure. I mean, maybe 10, maybe 20. I mean, it's really, really insane how nothing can be verified of any aspect of this case. So a couple of responses here. If you were an undergrad at UMass, especially an athlete, it would be surprising if you didn't spend lots of time at parties on Phillip Street and the surrounding area. It is, or at least was, as of the late 90s, party central. On a typical Friday or Saturday night during the school year, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people wandering from party to party in that area. Absolutely unremarkable that she would be there. Okay, so we do not have people denying the possibility that she might have. This sounds like somebody who went there in the late 90s, maybe not, or at least knew someone who went there. Either way, obviously, anywhere where there are frat houses, it's not unlikely that there would be lots of frat parties or other types of parties. So more responses here. She had 2 friends / track teammates who lived in that general area and roomed together. The only other reason both of their names would be on the same room number of that apartment complex is if one of them previously rented before another. So 2 of her track teammates were supposedly roommates together in that area. I don't know if this person is alleging specifically at this Phillip Street address in question or somewhere around it. But either way, other than that, I don't know who else Maura was relatively close to who may have lived in those apartments around Phillip Street. On the other side, going past Phillip Street, there was the UMass student who Concrete Guy apparently knew at one point. So this is the guy, he who cannot be named, from New Hampshire. This guy whose father owned a concrete company, supposedly there might have been pouring of a concrete foundation in February shortly after Maura Murray's disappearance. Again, if that's common up there in February, frozen ground and snow to pour concrete foundations, then nothing strange. If nobody ever pours concrete foundations there except the February of 2004, then that's a little bit more suspicious. I mean, I don't know. Call me crazy on that one. So apparently, one of Concrete Guy's friends or whomever lived there. We don't know the extent of the relationship. Coworker, friend, did she know Maura? We don't know. So this is a female friend of Concrete Guy's. Both of Concrete Guy's brothers were also social media friends with the same girl. Could mean they knew each other quite well in some form. These people could have also no connection to Maura. This area were sorority and frat houses. It appears that Sarah Alfieri's older brother also stayed there in that complex at one point. Unfortunately, this doesn't really tell us much or give us any answers to know if Maura was seeing someone there. And I'm guessing this is all gleaned from social media connections. Again, some allege that Concrete Guy and Maura were actually friends on MySpace. Now, if Maura had, whatever, hundreds and hundreds, possibly 1,000 friends, and she was just the type of person that would always accept friend requests from whomever, if Concrete Guy knew somebody who was at UMass, it's possible they could be friends on MySpace, and it is innocuous. It's a theoretical possibility, and again, this has not been confirmed. Not 100% confirmed. I think people posted screenshots, but I don't know if that's 100% confirmation. So, okay. So someone posted this. What's also interesting is the last time I saw his old MySpace, referring to Concrete Guy, I'm assuming here, he had Maura as one of his top friends. Okay, that's a little weird. What does top friends mean? Is that like the most contacted or whatever? I don't know if there was a setting. I never used MySpace, so the MySpace aficionados can chime in here. Do you set your like top friends, or is it just an algorithm friends most communicated with? So if Maura Murray was one of Concrete Guy's top friends, one of the top 5 most communicated with on MySpace, I mean, that would be something of a lead, I would think. Because he happens to be in the Haverhill area. And again, to reiterate, apparently Concrete Guy also has a red truck. Also, another post here. Apparently there was some kind of a shrine to Maura Murray that was on Concrete Guy's MySpace page. Some posters here. I haven't been able to find any pictures of it, but I've heard 2 people say that there was definitely some type of shrine to Maura on his page. I guess he deleted it a while back. So again, if he didn't know her at all, would he have a MySpace shrine to her, so to speak? Some further posts here. UMass student Maura Murray has an intimate affair with Iranian Hussein Baghdadi, a UMass track coach. In 2003, Maura Murray is seen visiting 2729 Phillips Street by an employee of the building's owner. 2729 Phillips Street is a popular party destination, especially for UMass athletes. The small apartment building is located less than a 5-minute walk from Maura Murray's dormitory. In 2006, the lead administrator of the Maura Murray Missing website co-signs for an apartment at 2729 Phillips Street in Amherst. Yeah, so that was Helena Murray, supposedly. So, okay, that's weird. So anyway, so as early as 2003, Maura Murray was seen at this Phillips Street address. So she had been there on at least one occasion, if this is to be believed. But according to, again, UMass students, people who have been there, it's entirely unremarkable that Maura could have been there many, many times on Friday and Saturday nights. Now, was she there the Saturday night of the Hadley accident, and does that have something to do with her disappearance? So let's continue on here to some more posts here. This is on the Maura Murray sub, r/Maura Murray sub. Also a sham subreddit, but apparently a lot more decent posts slip through the cracks here. Where did this myth about Kate being a close friend of Maura come from? Didn't Fred even say he didn't think Maura and Kate were ever that close? Is there even a photo of them ever hanging out together? Maura dated the track assistant coach. For sure there was some jealousy. I believe it is possible there was some hidden resentment among some of the trackmates. Also, Kate Markopoulos was Ellen Larkin's track sister, and Kate Markopoulos has not appeared on any podcast documentaries or even the initial search. I remember when I first saw the Oxygen documentary and couldn't believe Maura's supposed best friend at UMass didn't even bother to talk with Maggie. Also, where did this myth originate that Kate was protecting Maura from Bill? Her track sister, Ellen Larkin, literally had Bill on her podcast and acted like they were great buddies. How do we know Bill wasn't reaching out to Kate before all these final events transpired? How do we know Kate or someone else on the track team isn't the reason Bill possibly knew so much about where Maura was going and what Maura may have been doing in her life? I have always thought that Sarah Kate or someone else on the track team knew the person who had something to do with the demise of Maura. Maybe they didn't harm Maura herself, but they had a part somehow. I don't know. Something has always felt off about the track team's response to Maura's disappearance. Maybe I'm totally wrong, just a gut feeling. Some responses here. Let me repeat something from earlier because it might track back to the Sarah Alfieri cousins or friends at the dorm party. Kate Markopoulos reportedly... Okay, actually it states KM here, so I don't know if they're referring to Karen Mayotte or Kate Markopoulos. KM reportedly said that the Thursday night meltdown was probably Maura Murray faking to get out of work early. Something she'd done in the past, according to KM. Assume that meltdown was faked, but as part of the death in the family lie. Maura Murray was setting up her excuse to get away for the week, so she pulls the meltdown. If that is accurate, or at least I have believed, that this would eliminate any of the dorm party guys because Maura Murray hadn't met them yet, even if she did hook up with one of them on Saturday night or Sunday morning. Or there is any evidence that Maura Murray might have met any of these fellas before February 6th that might be who Maura Murray was going to meet up with after. So then back to law enforcement cleared for 2/9, but what about the days after? And this is, of course, a false dichotomy logical fallacy as well, because even if Maura Murray was lying to get away for the week, that doesn't mean she would never... There's no magic protection spell cast if you're lying to get out of work because you want to go on a trip or whatever. That doesn't mean magically you will never meet anyone in your life who can do you harm. Because, I mean, one has nothing to do with the other. I don't know where this person is going there with this post. But following up here, I find it hard to believe how much law enforcement cleared anyone only because of the amount of resources and money it would cause them over an abandoned car and a possible DWI walkaway with zero signs of any crime anywhere. That's not to say that they may have spoke to a few friends and all that, but as far as in-depth investigation into anyone linked to Maura seems quite a stretch. Missing persons cases are law enforcement's most hated type of category because a very large percentage of them return after some time and just wanted to get away for whatever reason. Law enforcement never spoke with Linda Salomone, who had one of the last calls on Maura's phone on February 9th. If a Salomone attached to that number was a sexual predator killer, no one would have ever known. That's a good point, too. I mean, if Salomone was a serial killer, how would anybody know that? Because they don't even bother tracking the last known movements or calls. I mean, that is kind of weird. Another response here, in-depth investigation into the attendees makes no sense as a good use of time and resources if the attendees' whereabouts are easily verified as being elsewhere. I can't recall where I saw that, but that is my understanding. Law enforcement verified their alibis, so cleared. So Sarah Alfieri's cousin could be Charlie Manson, but in this scenario, if he wasn't in New Hampshire and or couldn't have been in New Hampshire, it doesn't matter that he's Charlie Manson. Well, is that an assumption that was actually, their alibis were actually verified? How often do people verify second and third and fourth hand people accounts of having alibis in a missing persons case? I mean, even in a murder case, a lot of times some alibis are just taken on faith. Granted, going very deeply into this thread of investigation wouldn't have been likely in the early part of the case, and surely not in the first few days. But as the years have dragged on, it certainly would be warranted if the alibis aren't solid. I don't know if there's anything shaky about the alibis, but law enforcement seem to have accepted them and moved on, if they ever legitimately investigated in the first place. And that's assuming law enforcement actually didn't ask anything about the attendees early on. Law enforcement would have tried to find out what Maura Murray had done and who she was seeing recently and who saw her last before going missing. That led them to the dorm party that was 3 days prior. You think they didn't ask Sarah Alfieri or Kate Markopoulos if they thought Maura Murray might not have split for a few days to be with the handsome, exciting new guy she supposedly hooked up with, and who those guys were. I don't. That thought would have surely occurred to law enforcement. Well, again, if they were legitimately investigating. Perhaps especially if law enforcement was operating under the assumption that Maura Murray would be back in a few days, since that's what usually happens. Maura Murray absented herself without telling anyone to go be with one of those guys. Well, how would they know if maybe Maura Murray did tell people? I mean, how would anybody know? This might actually have seemed like the most likely explanation to law enforcement. Maura Murray was smitten and took off. Step 2 in following that thread depends on what they easily enough learned. Were these guys at work, in school, etc., wherever it is they lived? Well, again, assuming they were even told of the Phillips Street party. What if they just said there was a get-together, they glossed it over in Sarah Alfieri's dorm, and that was the end of that? Especially if there was some kind of crazy drug dealing going on. Other posts here. Also, it should be noted that law enforcement could ask certain people things, but there was zero crime ever documented. So law enforcement had no authority to demand anything from anyone. It's not anything such as it would be to get answers out of someone during a crime. Two totally separate things. Anyone has no demand to speak to police about anything, nor give them any info at all. It's purely none of their business. Cordial questions hold zero weight here. Any and all questions may not even be true, and law enforcement had zero authority to clear anyone in this case. It's a missing woman, not a bloody and gruesome crime, a la the O.J. Simpson's case. Clearing anyone in Maura's case isn't even a thing. That's a good point there. It's a good point. Some other posts here. I don't believe the dorm party hookup is involved, and I absolutely don't think Maura Murray faked it to get out of work, but I'll tell you what does make sense to me. Kate Markopoulos would have every reason to steer everyone in that direction if she bears some guilt for telling Billy Rausch Maura Murray's plans. Another post here. I think that is one of the biggest mysteries of the case. Was there a person from New Hampshire she may have met at the New Year's party? There are so many potential avenues to explore with this, it's just overwhelming because there's no information about this other guy Kate mentions. How do we know she wasn't seeing another guy besides that guy that Kate mentioned? Someone else said that Maura was still messing around with Hussein Baghdadi at this point. And that was the other guy. That's curious. I mean, in the previous few podcast episodes, I did talk about the other boyfriend, and supposedly she had met with Hussein Baghdadi a few months, at least as early as a few months prior. That could be 2 or 3. In which case, was their relationship truly over from the previous spring, summer? I mean, who knows? Another post here. Is it possible that it wasn't her father that Maura was anxious to go back to, but the person she was calling at Domino's? It was on her way to her father's motel. If I remember correctly, she left the dorm party at about the same time she called Domino's on the previous night, which probably coincided with the end of her friend's work shift. ETA, when KM left the voicemail asking Maura what happened with that guy, she could have been referring to her Domino's friend. Another post here. My understanding is that Maura Murray left Sarah Alfieri's dorm for some period of time with Sarah Alfieri's cousin or some other person, and then they returned. That's interesting. The exact timeline has never been verified. So were they at Sarah Alfieri's dorm, then they went to the Phillips Street address, then they came back? Huh. Again, no verification on any of this. Couple more posts here. This one's about Fred. Fred said Billy Rausch was a good guy and that Sharon Rausch was invaluable to the investigation. Obviously, the man's judgment is off. Wow, interesting statement there. Other posts, those girls told Billy Rausch, I think he's referring to Kate Markopoulos and Sarah Alfieri here, those girls told Bill Rausch of Maura Murray's plans. Then he found her, probably before she even left college, but if not then, definitely days after at her destination. Billy Rausch nor the military could provide proof of a plane ticket. And his CO nor the base can corroborate when he was granted leave. Billy Rausch left the base well before we think he did, probably by car. Then Maura Murray met her fate. Then Billy Rausch asked for emergency leave over the phone from somewhere in the Northeast. We need to dismiss the idea that he was in Oklahoma and went into the CO's office to request leave. He made over 50 phone calls, most to Sarah Alfieri and Kate Markopoulos in the days prior to Maura Murray's disappearance. Those girls told Billy Rausch Maura Murray's plans. Now the girls realize, uh-oh. Maura Murray didn't get picked up by a stranger or perish in the woods. I believe the accident is irrelevant to Maura Murray's fate. But those that believe Billy Rausch found her before she even left the college believe the whole accident scene was set up. Interesting post there. I don't know. Again, if Billy Rausch is the good guy, though, he might have been coming to save her and he couldn't reveal that. See, if Billy Rausch at the time, some believe he turned into this crazy abuser, whatever. What if this whole scenario caused him to go insane? He's also being trained in psychological operations. Is this just a bad mix? If at the time Billy Rausch was indeed the good guy and he was coming to save her and this was sensitive, there's corrupt law enforcement involved, he couldn't let the military know the truth. He couldn't let anybody know the truth. And if it really was for a good cause to save Maura Murray, would he get the cooperation of her friends? Possibly even Aaron Larkin. Is it possible we have this whole thing backwards for those that theorize that Billy Rausch and all these people are the bad guys? What if they're all the good guys? And this is some kind of far-reaching conspiracy that has silenced them, and they're too afraid to blow the whistle. Or they can't for whatever other reason. Maybe there are good law enforcement helping them, and there are gag orders in place, etc., so they can't... I mean, what are they supposed to do? Admit all of this? They can't. So either way, even if they're the good guys, they wouldn't be able to admit any of this. So I don't know if we should completely take that possibility off the table here. Another post here. I agree with what you were saying. It's definitely possible and may have been what happened. However, who is the other guy Maura was seeing? Kate left a voicemail that Bill found about this other new guy. We know Bill was probably raging about it, but we don't know anything about this guy. He hasn't even come forward yet. I can also tell you that Sarah Alfieri, for someone who resided in Massachusetts briefly, has more social media friends in Burlington, Vermont, and Londonderry, New Hampshire, than any other Massachusetts person I've researched on the case. Maybe it's not Kate, but Sarah, maybe both. There was also a rumor that Kate knew Concrete Guy somehow. I've tried to find something connecting these two, but have not been able to do so. Bill definitely seems like the top candidate for what happened to Maura, and you do a good job of breaking it down, how it likely could have happened. Okay. So, a lot of different theories here at play. Some people believe that this new guy is Sarah Alfieri's cousin. Another post here regarding the Bill Rausch theory. The key to this whole puzzle is those three girls. I can't pinpoint it, but I have some ideas. Regarding Kate, Sarah, and Aaron Larkin. The key to this whole puzzle is those three girls. I can't pinpoint it, but I have some ideas. Maura Murray probably told Kate Markopoulos and Sarah Alfieri her plans, and by extension, Ellen Larkin. Billy Rausch was pestering them for a few days with over 50 phone calls. I bet they told him her plans. And again, Aaron Larkin saying she may have passed the accident scene but can't be sure. It doesn't take a top-notch detective to see that this may be and probably is an issue. I mean, to me, the moniker that she chose, Gorilla Ontologist, I mean, who chooses that moniker? I mean, why is nobody talking about the name she chose? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different issues here. Is she putting herself at the accident scene in case someone else places her there? It doesn't make a shred of sense. A coworker, a runner, an acquaintance from school goes missing, any reasonable person would know instantly, holy expletive, I drove right past the accident scene, what a coincidence. It was 2 states away, you were either there or you weren't. Those phone calls are another anomaly that everyone just glosses over. Why on God's green earth would Billy Rausch call those girls constantly and repeatedly? Especially that before that he never called them. I don't know if that can be verified. I actually brought that up. If indeed he never called them prior, then it is strange. This is an issue. I think a bad investigation was done out of ineptitude. I'm really starting to think a bad investigation was done by design. I can give many concrete examples when investigators want an investigation to go a certain way. They ask the questions, or not, that will yield the answers to fit the narrative. And this person's username is retired NYPD, so I'm assuming they were a police officer. That is their opinion. They have another post here. This could be anything from a federal government cover-up to ineptitude of a local police department or a cover-up by local PD because the chief was drunk and they lied about the car and now they had to keep lying about other things. Now it looks like they killed Maura Murray, which didn't happen. But the cover-up is worse than the crime. That's actually a pretty good point. I mean, their egos are obviously way too stratospheric to admit that they lied, so they would rather have people believe unofficially that there's some kind of police conspiracy than admit they lied about the first point and the second point, and then it just all spiraled out of control. So the chief was driving around drunk, but he might have had nothing to do with Maura Murray. They never thought this would become what it did, and they never were going to say the cars were switched because the chief was drunk. Now, in retrospect, they probably wish they said the cars were switched because the chief was drunk and crashed. As far as her plans, maybe she was just getting away from Billy Rausch, who told her that night, the night before, he was coming. Maybe she was meeting no one. Now, the question is, did Billy Rausch get there before she left? And if so, was the accident staged? Or did Billy Rausch find her days later at the destination? Bill was not in Oklahoma when everyone thinks he was. He can't produce flight info, neither could the airlines, which leads a reasonable person to assume it's very possible he left the base unauthorized by car. Then, after he met up with Maura Murray, called the base frantically for emergency leave because he had already left, and God knows what else. And this is where the possible government cover-up comes in. If Billy Rausch was unaccounted for, then the military is somewhat culpable for Maura Murray's fate. And remember, there is no documentation at the base for Billy Rausch requesting off and when he actually left. He was off the base and in the Northeast a lot sooner than we think, probably left right after the call that led to Maura Murray's breakdown. This is why the mom got involved, the Red Cross, etc. He probably went home, and now mom has to protect Sonny Boy. Huh. Interesting theory there, pointing at Billy Rausch. And again, it could theoretically still work if Billy Rausch is the good guy, because then all those things would still be true. They also continue to discuss whether Billy Rausch was a smoker or not, and posters are stating that in one of Maura's letters to Julie, she mentions how Billy Rausch agreed to cut back on his smoking only when he was drinking. Whatever that means. So if Billy Rausch is a smoker, was that the guy that was at the scene with her Saturn? I mean, the plot thickens. The plot thickens. Everybody loves, the coincidence theorists love to ignore the man smoking a cigarette reported at the scene by the Westmans. They love to hallucinate that the transcript doesn't exist or that it was mistaken for a cell phone charger light. Another post here, which is something I've brought up in the past, too. The fact that Billy Rausch received leave over the phone is problematic for Bill Rausch. He does not have a verifiable alibi. Knowing the stalker he has become, what do you think the odds are she had two stalkers? One unknown and one Bill, yet the perp is the mystery person no one even knows exists. And yeah, I've proposed that as well. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities here, especially at Zoomass. This is Zoomass. There would potentially be no shortage of shady individuals at Zoomass. All right, so let's move on to this mysterious phone number on Maura Murray's phone log. So this was posted by Repulsive Wallaby about a week ago. The Syracuse number on Maura's phone log is marked as Sarah Alfieri's number. However, when looking the number up, it almost always shows Sarah's brother as the primary owner, the guy who was originally rumored to have left Sarah's party with Maura. What if Maura knew Sharon or Bill could see her phone bill and she was actually talking to Sarah's brother the entire time? Sarah could have lied to everyone early on and said that it was just her talking to Maura. This could have been a way to protect Maura's privacy from Bill if Maura was seeing Sarah's cousin and Sarah presumed Maura was still alive early on. Cousin or brother. However, this could have also been a way to cover her for her brother if something bad happened to Maura. And again, it seems more likely someone would cover for their brother rather than their cousin. I mean, I guess some people's cousins are really close, so maybe. But if it's just some random cousin, I mean, I don't know. It seems more likely if it was really Sarah Alfieri's brother, Perhaps she would have stayed silent to cover for him more likely than for a cousin. Again, I don't know any of these people. I don't know their relationships or how close any of them are, so this is all speculation. So if it's the exact same number, there would be no way to tell who Maura was actually on the phone with, Sarah or her brother. Bill and Sharon would never know Maura was talking to another guy this way, and Maura would have someone to cover for her. I mean, that's an interesting theory. That is interesting. Or Maura could have also had a burner phone, but who knows? So, some responses here. Bill also phoned this number several times on February 19th, 2004, around the same time as he was also trying to get in touch with Kate. I think that strengthens the case that it's Sarah Alfieri's number. Other posts here. I've often wondered if prior to receiving a phone from Bill, if she had a prepaid phone which still had minutes on it to communicate with other people. I find it strange that there are no calls to the track coach on that phone bill and few other calls on it. Other people respond about the dorm phone and the records that we don't have for Maura Murray's dorm room. So, another post here. I remember reading that there was an older comment from Sarah to Helena Murray. I always found strange. It stated something along the lines of Sarah telling Helena that she would not speak to her because she already told Fred the real story and didn't need to ever repeat it again. I think Renner posted something about this and screenshotted the comment by Helena Murray. Was this verified as being true? Why would Sarah need to tell anything other than the real story? What is this story? Then I remember it was stated Sarah didn't want to get Maura into trouble. I don't remember where that came from. Nothing seems normal about this. Of course, there's also AOL Instant Messenger, which we've gone over before, and all the possible communication there. But continuing on here with some other posts, I absolutely believe that Maura knew that Billy Rausch or Sharon Rausch were monitoring who she was talking to. She was a smart girl. Granted, she only had that phone for 47 days, or whatever it was. The more we learn of Billy Rausch's personality, I'm sure he had an ulterior motive when they got her that phone. I do wonder about her phone prior to that, and if maybe she had a second phone that was active until the end of January. Back in 2004, everyone didn't have cell phones. I was in college from 01 to 05 and had a few friends that didn't have one. So maybe prior to Billy Rausch giving Maura a phone for Christmas, she didn't have one. But if she did, it could maybe lend some clues on who she was talking to. Also, again, I think we really need to put a lot of focus on AOL Instant Messenger because back then so many people communicated with that, especially talking to people they weren't necessarily super close with, but possibly wanted to meet up with. Another interesting post here. She did not have a previous cell phone. Everyone has to remember that Billy Rausch and Maura did have an off time where they both saw other people, even acknowledged by Sharon. When they did seemingly get back together in the fall of 03, there were most certainly trust issues. All right, let's move on to yet another post by, again, Repulsive Wallaby, who does a lot of research on this case. This is on the Maura Murray subreddit, the Sham subreddit, but some interesting information here. Did Maura know this girl, a UMass student slash sorority sister, 2000 to 2004, who was friends with Concrete Guy and possibly knew Sarah Alfieri? Did Maura go to another party near Phillip Street after Sarah's dorm and meet someone? Did Sarah introduce Maura to someone who may have harmed Maura? Back in the MySpace days, you had your normal friends and then your top 8 friends. Okay, so this is going to answer my question from before. These were the people you communicated the most, but you could also customize your top 8 friends list. Curious. When looking at Concrete Guy's old MySpace, I was initially intrigued by the connection he had with Mike Lavoie's son. Whoa! The plot thickens! Is anybody surprised? The coincidence stack is about to get a whole lot higher. So wait a second. So, Concrete Guy, the son of a prominent businessman, is also friends with Mike Lavoie, a tow truck driver who happened to be involved in towing the Saturn when he was not on rotation, which caused a whole situation. For those not familiar with it, I'm not going to get into that here. Just go back to the previous episodes. But Mike Lavoie, the tow truck driver, who apparently tows the Saturn to his own private home. Okay, so Concrete Guy is friends with Lavoie's son. Okay. However, I noticed Concrete Guy and his two brothers all had one mutual top 8 female friend in common. She is the same age as Maura, went to UMass 2000 to 2004, same years as Maura, had a residence in New Hampshire at the time, and had also lived in New York. She was a sorority sister in the apartments across the street from Phillips Street. It says fraternities and sororities stayed there. Here is where it gets interesting. It seems that one of the previous owners of this girl's apartment number across from Phillips Street was Sarah Alfieri's brother. And actually, does she have 2 brothers? Some people stated she had 2 brothers. Either way, however, this person, Sarah Alfieri's brother, is listed as the previous owner on multiple apartment numbers this girl stayed in. I'm wondering if they knew each other quite well. I have also wondered if Sarah's cousin wasn't the only family member at her party because her brother lived so close by. Both brothers lived in New York at some point as well. This girl also lived in New York. Do these people all know each other? Okay, hold on a second. It's a good thing Maxwell's not here because this could explode some brains. So, I mean, I'm having some trouble here myself. So, okay. Sarah Alfieri has 2 brothers. So supposedly it's been confirmed that her cousin was at this mysterious dorm party. So Sarah Alfieri's cousin might have been at the party. Supposedly that's who everybody's talking about. Now, she also has 2 brothers, one of which supposedly lived very close to UMass. Now, and also is friendly with this female who also happens to be one of Concrete Guy from the Haverhill area's top friends. Is everybody following? Okay. Also, Kate Markopoulos is from New York State as well, is she not? Did Maura know this girl? Did Maura meet her at the dorm party or a possible party in the Phillips Street area? Perhaps this is one of the friends Maura already knew from the Haverhill, New Hampshire area. There was an old rumor that Maura had gone to a party in the Phillips Street area after the supposed dorm party instead of going back to her dorm room. Lastly, how did Concrete Guy and his brothers all know this girl who was younger and at UMass at the time? Maybe there was a possibility that Sarah and Maura ran into Concrete Guy at a party, but there is not much more to go on. Many possibilities. But we know this girl went to UMass the same years as Maura, had a place in New Hampshire, grew up in New York where both Sarah and her brothers lived, and possibly Kate Markopoulos, knew Concrete Guy at one time on a fairly well level, and possibly knew Sarah and her brother. Now, also, if Concrete Guy also had Maura on one of his top 8 friends on MySpace, then we have quite a circle here. Quite a circle indeed. So some other interesting posts here. There was some talk that Maura may have been regularly staying the night over on Phillips Street with a friend and or friends. John Smith was talking about this on the other Maura Murray forum. Not sure where this originated from, but there was another rumor that Maura went to another party after Sarah's dorm. 2 of Maura's trackmates also roomed together right next to Phillips Street. One of them is one of the people Maura called Saturday evening the weekend before she disappeared. So for the coincidence theorists that maintain that all of this is all coincidental, which it might be, I mean, who knows? Let's look at the numbers, though. Let's look at the numbers here. So you can go to umassp.edu, and you can get all the numbers for all of the years, how many faculty, how many students. So let's look at the total amount of students here. So there were so in Amherst there were 18,139 undergraduates and 5,680 graduate students. So if we're looking at undergrads only, we're looking at 18,139 students. So keep that in mind. Out of 18,139 students, and these are the fall numbers. So there could have been more in the second half of the year, or less possibly if people dropped out, people transferred, whatever the case may be. But we're looking at a crazy amount of people here. And Maura just so happens to know all these individuals that are connected to the Phillip Street address, who are connected to Sarah Alfieri, who's Maura is connected to through the art gallery job. So just keep that in mind. This is not some small little college where there's only a couple hundred or even 1,000 or 2,000 people, where it wouldn't necessarily be that strange that all these people know each other. But we're talking upwards of 18,000 students. And these are the connections we're examining. So if Maura was staying the night over there, and she wasn't even in her own dorm room frequently, which again, for those that don't remember, we actually went over this on previous episodes. Other people on Maura's floor at her dorm, they didn't even know who she was. Now, does that indicate she was not there often at all? Is that possible? Someone else could have even been staying there. Whether or not she even had a roommate, people actually... I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole right now. She may or may not have had a roommate, may or may not have let someone else stay there. So, was she staying in the Phillip Street area because she was afraid? Was she involved in something in her dorm room? See, if there's some corruption involving UMPD, they would obviously have her dorm number. So did she feel safer staying elsewhere? And when that other address became compromised, is that why she wanted to go to Fred's desperately that night, in the middle of the night, during the witching hour? I mean, it's all quite weird. It's all very, very weird. So John Smith himself has chimed in here regarding this girl that Maura may have known, connected to all these people. This is a great post. Thank you for putting this up. I personally have been interested in the Phillip Street apartment building as well as the fraternity and sororities in the area. Lots of people had considered the thought that maybe Maura was not staying in her room, but actually staying someplace off campus. Is it possible that she was staying at one of the Phillip Street sororities for fraternities with someone? Also, a person that owned one of the fraternity buildings on Phillip Street was also the owner of Reliance Auto, and this is possibly related to the Iranian ring. Considering this female had a residence in Nashua, New Hampshire, which is very close to Londonderry, could this have been the Londonderry ping? Just more coincidences in this case, or is it possible there is a connection? Keep digging, my friend. The answer is out there. Another post here. So two of Maura's trackmates roomed together right across from Phillip Street. One of them spoke to Maura on the phone Saturday evening before Sarah's dorm party. So were they informing her that there was another party at Phillip, so that way those plans to go to that party were put in motion before Maura went to Sarah's dorm? Another post here. Yes, Nashua is the correct place. This girl was also in the Sigma Delta Tau sorority. I tried to find any connections with Maura and could not find any. Thanks for all the information on that too. I have never heard the rumor that Maura was possibly staying with someone at Phillip Street. Very interesting indeed. I have always been intrigued by the Londonderry ping. Wouldn't that be crazy? Where do you think Concrete Guy possibly falls into all of this, if he does? Besides the random pouring of concrete in the winter and the red truck, do you remember why Concrete Guy was such an initial person of interest when the search for Maura started? I find it interesting that him and all three of his brothers, he has 3 brothers, were friends with this girl, and they must have known each other pretty well. It would also be curious, were any of Concrete Guy's brothers also possibly part of the Loon Mountain 3? Or knew them? Concrete Guy was an initial person of interest in the case because he was allegedly drunk at a party, and he stated to a bunch of people that he had killed Maura. Wow. You know what? I think my memory's going the way of Maxwell's, because I don't know if I remember that. Did we go over that on the first episodes? I mean, these are dozens and dozens of episodes years ago now, but it sounds kind of familiar. But I mean, then again, was that Rick Forcier who bragged that he had killed Maura to his ex-wife in a drunken stupor, and those got kind of mixed up? I don't know, but this individual here is stating that unless this guy's mistaken, and he's conflating Concrete Guy and Forcier. Most of the people that heard it thought he was just oh, maybe not. Most of the people that heard it thought he was kidding, but some thought it was particularly creepy and unwarranted, akin to Rick Forcier stating, Maura's locked in my house, she's a great cook. Okay, so this individual clearly knows about Rick Forcier, and he specifically cited that. So maybe this individual is correct, and this is an incident where Concrete Guy was drunk at a party and said this. Also, Concrete Guy was a person of interest because he was one of the few in the area who drove a red truck, and he would often arrive home from work at the same time as Maura's crash, or the Saturn's crash, rather. Obviously, we have no evidence Maura was there. There are several rumors about Concrete Guy that may or may not be true, and let's face it, almost everything that we hear in every podcast or documentary or read in any blog or on Reddit is largely based on hearsay, so it is impossible to differentiate what is true and what isn't. Supposedly, very few people that live in that area think that Concrete Guy was involved. Well, also, I remember something about Concrete Guy's relative being the state DA or something like that. So that way nothing would ever be aimed in his direction. Another post here. Someone from there, a local, thinks Maura was going to meet a guy on Lime Kiln Road. Maura knew a girl on that street of Pike, New Hampshire. Is this the same girl we're talking about? Is this a different girl? Which would mean, how many people did Maura actually know in New Hampshire? How many direct links to Haverhill are there? Because supposedly, the Murray family also had relatives specifically in Haverhill, which some find strange because the family never mentions that, and they just keep saying they don't know why she was in Haverhill and that she was heading elsewhere. So if there's multiple connections here directly to Haverhill, I mean, that's kind of weird. And with all of this new information coming out with these direct connections to Haverhill, now whether they're second degree, third degree, whatever, if they're all legitimate and Maura knew these people directly connected to Haverhill, does that lead more credence to the possibility that some of the earlier theories that Maura died at a party, drug overdose or whatever, in the Haverhill area? Because there were rumors early on. Now, to be fair, in almost every case, there seems to be a rumor that there was some kind of OD at a party. So, by itself, it doesn't really mean that much. But if there were locals partying, and again, the rumor mill, somebody could have said something, and somebody could have heard a broken telephone account of it. Maybe it wasn't even Maura Murray, but if it was Maura Murray and someone did see her at a party in that area, and she did OD or just whatever, alcohol poisoning happens too. It doesn't have to be, you know, some other type of drug. She could have just drank too heavily. Some would say really upset about certain things, whatever, drank so heavy that she possibly died, or maybe just being that drunk, maybe she fell down the stairs, whatever. Severely drunk people have accidents. Obviously, it's much more likely to have an accident when you're completely drunk and you don't have full control of your motor skills, whether in a vehicle or not. So who knows what was going on at that party? But if there was some kind of an accident, does the fact that Maura might have been connected to all these people directly in Haverhill, does that increase the chances of those early rumors that Maura died at a party that night in the Haverhill area? Does that increase those chances? Now we're going to get really far into MINDSHOCK land. So apparently, okay, let me continue going over this post here. Someone from there, a local, thinks Maura was going to meet a guy on Lime Kiln Road. Maura knew a girl on that street of Pike, New Hampshire. The guy had a father who was doing things not legal at all. All those friends... Wow. Hold on a second here. With Concrete Guy... and apparently people connected with Claude Moulton? So, and these are... I went over early rumors in the previous episode about the wood chipper rumor. Someone reiterated here, there was a user from Topics in 2008 who posted that Claude Moulton killed Maura and one of his friends, Red, possibly a biker of some kind, throwing her body in a wood chipper. The rumor was that a few of those local guys were involved. I have an older post about that specific post. Kind of creeped me out, but the original post itself was very difficult to understand. Another post here from a very astute researcher. While people are connecting dots between UMass, Maura, and the area where the Saturn was found, let's see who can dig anything on this one. No one mentions a Haverhill officer who came on duty that same evening and helped search the Saturn the very next morning. No one has tracked what vehicle he was in when he came on duty either. He also had a sister who was at UMass on February 9th, 2004. Wait, what? Was she the female in the Saturn, or for whatever reason he swooped in to get her out of there and Atwood put two and two together? Of course, her own brother, as an on-duty local cop, wouldn't want his sister to be found in Fred Murray's car in New Hampshire with no signs of Maura anywhere, even if she had no tangible connection to Maura's disappearance. Hold on a second. This might be one mind shock too many. I might now have to just cease this entire podcast series on Maura Murray because I don't know if this case can handle another coincidence. This poster here is alleging that a Haverhill police officer has a sister at UMass. Okay, I mean, UMass does have a lot of students. There's quite a lot of students there. Huh. I don't know what to make of that one. Alright, let's continue this. This is weird. Monahan was New Hampshire State Police on scene February 9, 2004. Everybody always loves to forget how New Hampshire State Police denied the very fact that he was even on the scene for, I think it was around a year or so. Fred Murray was really upset about that. Nobody talks about that now. But anyway, then Sergeant Cecil interacted with neighbors upon the Saturn scene and wrote the accident report. Cecil references a partner advised in the logs, but no further verification of who. But Cecil maintains he was the lone officer on duty. H2 and H6 were officers Charles and Cashin. Both technically came on duty before midnight, yet Cecil was still on active duty as he assisted both of them around 1 a.m. Cecil appears to have gone past his regular shift hours on February 9th, 2004, and he left the Saturn after 9 p.m. to assist with a possible suicide in Lyme, New Hampshire. Hold on a second. Before I continue this post, I have to interject here with So this particular night, how many suicide calls were called in? There were several suicide calls, possibly up to 5, or maybe even 6. So more suicide calls in one night than a 1 to 2 month average or whatever it was. That's kind of crazy. Is it possible that someone who possibly had too much to drink or drugs at a party, someone called in a suicide to cover up an accident? Is that a possibility? Or more than one person did that? So if 1 or 2 of those calls are for a specific party, again, Maura Murray or not, I mean, why are there so many suicide calls that particular night? I mean, it's kind of weird. Again, we have controls, we have baselines. If this is that uncommon, I mean, again, this is not New York City. This is not a super highly populated area. This is a hamlet basically in the middle of nowhere. So why are there so much weirdness this particular night? I mean, there's the DEA vehicle. There's the U.S. Marshal activity in the area. All that night. Things coincidence theorists do not want to talk about. Again, it's possible it's not related, but just it's just weird because if that's the only night ever that there was U.S. Marshal activity, I mean, how often is there U.S. Marshal activity in the Haverhill area? How often is there DEA activity in the Haverhill area? I mean, if they're milling about every single day or whatever, a couple times a month, okay, not unusual. But if that's the only time ever, or if they average like one activity every 5 years and it just happened to be that night, that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. All right, continuing the post here. Officers Charles and Cashin both searched the Saturn once a judge allowed them to do an official search. This was conducted into Tuesday, where they later determined it was Maura Murray and did a BOL for her at noontime Tuesday. So officially their hours were February 9th to February 10th, doing the overnight shift. There has always been the question of an earlier arrival at Cecil's at the scene, and the arguments over the 001 SUV and the 002 sedan being there. Some say only Cecil and the 001 SUV. However, my question remains for any super sleuths out there. What vehicles were H2 and H6 driving that evening during their shifts when Cecil was still out there with the SUV? If it was the SUV. Curiously, Cecil said it was winter and it needed to be in the 4x4. Yet two other officers were frolicking around during the cold overnight of February without a 4x4? Quite curious, I'd say. This question remains unanswered 18 years later. And neither Charles nor Cashin has spoken much about the case, if at all, in all that time. They both made a few comments in Renner's book, but nothing else. Oxygen ignored these two completely, and both went on to become police chiefs in other towns nearby. Wow, that's a crazy post right there. Another post here. Someone alleges that Concrete Guy is also related to one of the track team members. One of Maura's phone calls from the night of the party. So apparently there's two of these people with the same names. One of them was on the UMass track team, one wasn't. One of them also attended Whitman Hanson High School, the same high school Maura Murray had attended. I mean, is this coincidence city or what? So if this individual really is related to Concrete Guy, I mean, that's curious. So here's a post. I think I read this in that original POI podcast where I went over Concrete Guy for the first time, I think. So this is a poster by user since deleted. Here's my correspondence from a fellow Redditor regarding Concrete Guy. This member, who I haven't heard from in a few months, is purportedly a local who had experiences with Concrete Guy. All of his writings are verbatim below, minus anything that may constitute identifying information. Text in brackets is from me. Impressions. He's not a bad-looking guy, and he knows it. He's very confident, maybe even overly so. He doesn't seem to have long-lasting relationships, but I know he is in one right now. I think he comes off as a playboy. Personally, like I said, I thought it was fishy that he left the concrete business shortly after Maura went missing. Around the same time as when rumors started about him. This would be late 2004. Is this when he was deployed in the military or something? A lot of people seem to have disappeared right after Maura Murray's disappearance. I'm interested in seeing if I can run into him at the local bar and maybe provoke a discussion about the Oxygen show. In the past, he had been very interested in the case. Another thing, honestly, the guy creeps me out. He just comes off as a skis, almost like he would be abusive. To be blunt, I could see him being so arrogant as to think he'd never get caught. I am local and have met him. It's a small town, so everyone pretty much knows everyone and knows each other's business. We are also the same age. He hasn't been violent that I have seen personally, but he likes to drink. I wouldn't doubt a one-night stand, but I'm not sure about non-consensual sex. Edit, I asked posters if he ever heard rumors about Concrete Guy engaging in rough or non-consensual sex. Like I said before, he's a pretty overconfident guy and must have seen him as a playboy. I did hear that rumor about his ex. Edit, there were rumors that Concrete Guy stalked an ex so badly that she left the state. But I didn't know her personally. I remember it ending pretty abruptly. They came into the store that the poster worked at frequently. She stopped coming in with him all of a sudden, and shortly after heard the rumors about her leaving the state. His family lives in the area too, and I know all of them. His dad is a nice, hardworking guy, and we have had quite a few conversations. To a question as to whether Concrete Guy seems like he might get violent upon being rejected, the response was, honestly, yes. He seems pretty hot-headed. Regarding the red truck, I remember the red truck rumor coming up and thinking of him pretty instantly. He just threw me off. He had access to sand pits off of 112 at the time, too. I don't remember his personal vehicle. I just remember him always driving the red company truck around town. Saw it at the bar, too. And you know what else is curious? People forget. Law enforcement apparently was stopping red trucks all night that night. Now, this is something that's not reported. We went over it in the red truck episode. I might have to do a follow-up on the red truck. We might have to do a whole nother episode on the red truck. Because apparently, over a DUI walk-away, law enforcement felt the need to stop red trucks in the area all night. I mean, this sure was swept under the rug. I mean, that's kind of weird. All right, continuing the post here. Regarding internet trolling and interest in the case, keep in mind this was posted over 4 years ago. Honestly, if Maura was harmed, I believe he was part of it. I know I'm not the only one around here. I also think he's behind some of the internet trolling. Like I said, he's an overconfident guy. Everyone knows that he's extremely interested in the case. To my knowledge, he has gone to several of the anniversary meetings. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the person sending emails to the oxygen people. Wow. That's kind of crazy. A few more posts here. I did some research, and it turns out that there could be a good chance Maura also went somewhere near Phillip Street to meet up with some friends after Sarah's dorm. She made a call to the other track teammate that same evening who had a Springfield number. However, this trackmate of hers actually stayed right near Phillip Street and looks to have possibly roomed with another UMass trackmate. Maybe Maura had plans with this group of friends that night as well. A response to that, this is good stuff. I always wondered if Sarah was an outsider to the athletes' party scene, but she may have been more of an insider if she had relatives that had been there before. Interesting. Makes me think even less of just one party Saturday night. So, a lot of weird coincidences. I mean, they just never end. I mean, the Maura Murray case was already my top pick for most coincidences in any case ever before this episode. With this episode, I mean, I'm mind shocked. I mean, this is just insanity. The amount of people connected directly to the Haverhill area. I mean, it's just weird. It's weird. Like, I don't know what to make of that. That's just like too many coincidences. Now, if a law enforcement officer, if one of the Haverhill officers, his relative goes to UMass as well, so he has a direct connection to UMass, that's rough. That's rough. And then all these other people connected to the Phillip Street address, which may be connected to the Haverhill area as well. Sarah Alfieri, direct connection to these people, as well as the UMass trackmates. Okay, wow. What does everybody make of this? I mean, this is just beyond mind-shocking now. And the fact that more information keeps coming out in this case, I mean, this is... Most of the research being done here doesn't seem to be from law enforcement. It's from internet sleuths that are kind of keeping this case alive. And as I've stated before, I think there's enough information to get this solved unless certain high-ranking entities don't want it solved for whatever reason. And of course, those are just plenty more question marks in this case. But yeah, believe it or not, plenty more to come, plenty more to go over in the Maura Murray case. If you enjoy the MindShock podcast, find it interesting and informative, you can help support the podcast by donating to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help us get more mind-shocking content out there to keep up awareness in true crime cases. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.